Hey there, all you thrill seekers and Goosebumps fans. Welcome back to our channel, where we're diving deep into the spectacular and spine-tingling world of the Goosebumps TV series monsters. Today we've got a frightfully fun journey ahead. Don't we all remember the creepy, kooky, and downright bone-chilling creatures from R.L. Stine's iconic Goosebumps series? In this video, let us take a stroll down memory lane to revisit some of the most horrifying and monstrous creations that have ever graced our television screens. We will delve into the origins, narratives, and motives of iconic night-dwelling creatures like Slappy, the horrifying ventriloquist dummy who haunted our dreams, the haunted mask with its uncanny presence, as well as the sinister mummies. So let's set the scene. You've got your popcorn in hand and the lights are off for an added thrill. Now prepare to travel back in time and recall those childhood terrors that once kept us awake at night. Get ready to relive some of the most spine-chilling moments from the Goosebumps TV series. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Slappy the Dummy. Alright folks, let's talk about Slappy, the bad boy of the ventriloquist dummy world, and one of R.L. Stine's all-time classics. Slappy isn't your average puppet. This little guy's got a wicked spirit, and he knows it. He's got a sense of humor, but it's the twisted, evil kind. Slappy's a prankster, but not the funny kind you'd want at your party. He's the kind who lives to make you miserable. He's downright sadistic and takes pleasure in dishing out insults, but here's the kicker. Slappy's not just about mind games and practical jokes. Nope, he's got a taste for the extreme. He actually tried to take folks out once and for all, and here's the craziest part. He's got this secret code, Karu Marie Odana Loma Malunu Karano. Say that out loud and bam! Slappy comes to life, and what's his grand plan once he's back? He wants you to be his slave. Yeah, he's got a thing for making humans do his bidding, and he's a tough nut to crack. He's not the scariest monster out there, but definitely one of the most relentless.
Bye-bye, scaredy cat. Bye-bye.
The Haunted Mask. Now let's dive into the tale of the creepiest mask you've ever seen, the Haunted Mask. This bad boy is a real looker, and by that we mean it's grotesque. Picture this: greenish skin, a mega heavy brow, a nose that's all twisted into a fierce scowl, ears like they've seen better days, and a mouth with these long creepy fangs. It's like the ultimate Halloween costume gone wrong. But here's the spooky part: it's not just a mask. Nope, it can look like a real face, and it's got this thing where it sucks up evil and fear like a vacuum. So whenever someone wears it, it cranks up all your worst vibes. It's like an emotional amplifier, and if you're not careful, it can straight up possess you. The Haunted Mask is at its peak game during Halloween. Talk about perfect timing, right? So watch out for this emotion-twisting, mayhem-causing monster. It's a mask you don't want to mess with. The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, Will Blake. Let's talk about Will, or as he's famously known, the Werewolf of Fever Swamp. Now, in his human form, Will seems like a regular friendly kid with a good sense of humor. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? But when the moon does its thing and turns him into a werewolf, oh boy, watch out. This dude goes from zero to ferocious in a split second. He's like a furry, nightmarish beast with glowing yellow eyes. Imagine the most enormous, meanest wolf you can picture, but even scarier. What's really intriguing is that we're not even sure if Will himself knows about his werewolf double life. That just adds an extra layer of spookiness to the whole story. So keep an eye out for the Werewolf of Fever Swamp, because you never know when he might go from buddy to beast. The Scarecrows. Now let's talk about those creepy scarecrows. These guys ain't your typical straw-filled dummies in the field. Nope, they're Stanley's little puppets, brought to life to play some seriously twisted games. Stanley's not here for fun, he's all about making others do his bidding. These living scarecrows are like relentless salespeople. They won't take no for an answer. They keep breaking into houses, and just the thought of that is giving us one wild and sleepless night. But the funniest and maybe creepiest part is how they meet their end. It's like something out of a horror movie. They all end up as bird food in the thresher. Talk about a brutal way to go, right? So if you've ever come across some suspicious looking scarecrows in the cornfield, you better watch your back. They might be up to something more than just scaring away crows. The lawn gnomes. Now let's dish out some info of those lawn gnomes. Chip and Hap. In the daytime, they're all cute and innocent, just hanging out in your garden, doing their gnome thing, but when the sun goes down, watch out because these little guys turn into real troublemakers. You see, Chip and Hap aren't your regular garden variety gnomes. Nope, they're the mischief gnomes. Sounds pretty amusing, doesn't it? But not when you're the one who's bought them. These gnomes have a sorrowful history. They endured a life of gnome slavery after being snatched from their woodland abode. Moreover, they inevitably cause chaos as though their DNA has them encoded to do so. So your lawn and your property better watch out when these two are on the loose. But there's hope. These troublemakers have a kryptonite, a dog whistle. Blast that thing and they freeze up like statues. So if you got some pesky lawn gnomes in your yard, you better keep that whistle handy. The horrors. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the horrors. They are like the ultimate nightmare come to life. Picture this. They're horned monsters with a sickly light green skin tone, and they crawled out of a cursed radioactive slime puddle. No mama or papa for these creatures. They just popped out because of a witch's curse. How wild is that? But here's where things get extra eerie. The horrors run an amusement park called Horrorland, and it's not your typical roller coaster and cotton candy kind of deal. Oh no, sir. They like to mess with humans big time. They'll put you through rides and mess with your mind and body, pushing you to the limits. Don't be fooled by their creepy exterior. These guys are smart cookies. They've got this theme park hooked with all kinds of high-tech gadgets and inventions. So they're not just brawn, they've got brains too. After a long day of scaring the living daylights out of people, they kick back at the stagger in and catch their favorite shows. It's like a monster Netflix and chill situation. But here's the kicker, they've got a weak spot, and it's a weird one. Pinching them. Pinch a horror and they deflate like a pop balloon. So if you ever find yourself in Horrorland, keep those fingers ready for some pinching action. Rip the cat. Now let's talk about Rip, the baddest feline to ever roam the earth. This cat wasn't your ordinary cute fluffy kitty. Oh no, Rip was all about chaos and terror. First things first, Rip had a whopping 9 lives, and he was determined to use every single one to make life miserable for any human unlucky enough to cross his path. He loved living, but not the way we do. Nope, he relished in his reign of terror and never wanted to stay down. Think of him as a real-life horror show. Now, Rip looked like more of a disaster than a cat. Ragged, almost hairless, and to top it all off, he had what looked like wings on his back. Just your average demon kitty, right? When it came to his personality, Rip was a mean and vicious little guy. If you ever thought about messing with him, oh boy, you'd be in for a terrible time. He didn't show any mercy when it came to punishing those who dared to cross him, and well, let's just say his name wasn't just for show. Experimented on evil to the core, and as relentless as they come, that's Rip, the killer cat with 9 lives. And he wasn't letting go of any of them without a fight. The Pumpkinheads. The Pumpkinheads, or Shane and Shanna, are the most unusual aliens you'll ever meet. So picture this. They've got these pumpkins on their heads, but they're not the friendly jack-o'-lantern kind of deal. Nah, these pumpkins have creepy carved faces like something straight out of a Halloween horror flick. But when you finally take a peek at their real faces, they're actually green aliens with those super long necks and some eerie eyes to match. The taller ones, about as big as those Scarecrows, so you can imagine the double dose of spookiness there. Now, we don't know about you, but we can't help but think these aliens might have gotten their Halloween traditions a bit mixed up. But hey, who are we to judge? If you see a couple of green aliens with pumpkin heads, just remember to keep your costumes close and your Halloween loot even closer. Mummies. Mummies. We've all heard about these wrapped up ancient guys, but here's where it gets juicy. In the Goosebumps world, mummies are more than just dusty relics. They're undead, preserved corpses that can wake up and cause some serious trouble. Now, if you want to see a mummy rise from the dead, all you gotta do is show them the summoner. It's this little mummified hand of mysterious origins. But that's not the only trick they've got out of their wrappings. There's this legend that says Prince Koru's mummy will come to life if you chant 6 words. Teki Karu, Teki Kata, Teki Kati. Sounds like a recipe for disaster, right? Once these mummies are up and running, they're no pushovers. They might be slow because they're all old and withered, but they're surprisingly powerful, especially when they gang up on you. But here's the good news. Their gauze wrappings is as flammable as a stack of dry leaves, so a little fire and poof, they are toast. And if you've ever been in a mummy showdown, remember this one golden rule: water is your friend. Douse them and they'll turn to ash faster than you'd think. So whether you're into ancient history or just a good scare, the mummies and Goosebumps will definitely give you a run for your money. Mr. Mortman. Now, let's talk about Mr. Mortman, the Timberland Falls librarian. This guy's a real character. He might look like your typical librarian, but he's got a monstrous twist to him. First off, Mortman takes his librarian gig super seriously, despite being a monster. Well, he's kind of a big deal in town because he's the first monster to step into Timberland Falls in 2 whole decades. Picture this, he's got eye stalks, sharp teeth, and some seriously scaly skin going on in his monster form. Not exactly your everyday librarian look, right? What's even more interesting is that Mortman seems to have a soft spot for other monsters like him. Maybe they bond over a love of scary stories or something? Who knows? But here's where it gets wild. When he's in his human form, Mortman dials up the creepiness. He runs a reading program called the Reading Rangers at the library, where he gives out stars to kids for reading books. Sounds all nice and dandy, right? Well, don't be fooled. Mortman's anything but that, and he's got a real villainous streak. He's sadistic, constantly chuckling and getting a kick out of being wicked. And here's the real kicker. He's genuinely thrilled at the thought of having a human child for dinner. Yep, he's one creepy librarian for sure. The Blob. Let's talk about the Blob. This monstrous entity resembles a yellow blob embellished with streaks of purple veins. Moreover, it features an uncanny rope-like tongue. Imagine an adorable yellow mass with a sinister touch. This includes a toothy grin and no eyes. Now, brace yourself for the extraordinary. A 12-year-old kid named Zachy Buchip conceived the Blob into existence. He penned its story on an enchanted typewriter, and here's the kicker. Whatever Zachy writes in the story, the Blob does it for real. It's like a living, breathing, and hungry for action character straight from the pages of a horror story. But hold on to your hats because we've got a twist ending. You see, we ultimately realized that the Blob's the real author here. Talk about a plot twist, right? So next time you're writing a story on a magical typewriter, keep an eye out for any yellow blobs with a taste for adventure. The Phantom, Brian Coulson. Alright, let's move on to the Phantom, and as we know him, Brian Coulson. Now, Brian was no typical ghost, not by a long shot. He used to be a child actor, tall and thin, with dark brown hair and these bright green eyes that people found kind of cute. But get this, he didn't exactly seem like the Hollywood type. Brian was very different from a typical image of an actor who loves the spotlight. Instead, he was a shy kid with a fervent passion for performing, though on his own terms. The rules were not something he usually disregarded, and his commitment to help and unwavering enthusiasm always shone through. He passed away on what should have been the most important night of his life, which truly shattered his heart. This explains why, even in his ghostly form, he fervently tried to secure the role of Phantom in an upcoming play, a task he was determined to fulfill since 72 years ago when his death prevented him from completing his dream. Now that's some real dedication even in the afterlife. The Swamp Monster. Let's dive into the Swamp Monster, and boy, it is a peculiar one. Picture this, it's like a man-sized chicken-dino hybrid. Yeah, you heard that right, a chicken and a dinosaur mix. It's a goofy-looking thing, kind of like a big, feathery, scaly dude. Now, here's the twist. The Swamp Monster is allergic to humans. I mean, how's that for a weird weakness, right? But don't be fooled, it's not the brightest crayon in the box. It's pretty dumb and always seems to be on the hunt for its next meal. A real foodie, you could say, but here's where it gets complicated. It's not sapient and can't talk. It just does its thing. There is no evil mastermind stuff going on in its head. However, when the kids messed with it, things got nasty. They tried to off the poor thing and kept bothering it when it was trying to eat, so you could argue it might have been a reason to be a bit upset. So the verdict's still out on how evil this monster really is, but one thing's for sure, it didn't have any qualms about taking on kids when they poked the beast. But maybe, just maybe, it was misunderstood. Who knows? It's all up in the air. Rocky the Dummy. Rocky the Dummy is like something straight out of a gangster movie from the 1930s. You know, with the fancy suits, slick hair, and all that jazz. Maybe a nod to The Godfather? Who knows? Now here's the twist. Rocky came to life thanks to the same magic words that brought Slappy to life. Initially, it seemed like they'd make the perfect evil duo, but nope, Rocky had other plans. He turned on Slappy and chucked him out of the window right into a lightning storm. Talk about a dramatic exit. With Slappy fried to a crisp, Rocky lost his magical powers and went back to his deep sleep mode. But here's where things get spicy. It turns out Slappy got his revenge on Rocky after the events of the episode. It's like a never-ending puppet showdown, and you can bet these dummies have their own beef to settle. So in the world of ventriloquist dummies, it's all drama, revenge, and magic spells. Who knew they had so much going on, right? The Headless Ghost, Andrew Craw. Let's talk about the Headless Ghost, or more accurately, the Ghost Boy Andrew. This kid was a real piece of work when he was alive, a nasty brat who loved pulling mean pranks. But here's where things get spooky. He lived in a haunted house, and one day he pushed his luck too far. He managed to find a hiding spot of the house's resident ghost who wasn't too thrilled with Andrew's behavior, so as punishment, the spirit got mad and snatched his head. Talk about an extreme way to teach a lesson, right? From that day on, Andrew's been on the hunt for his missing head. The story goes that the house was the scene of some pretty eerie disappearances, but whether they were real or just made up to make the place seem scarier, we'll never really know. Ghost stories, right? There's always a mix of truth and tall tales. Sarah Beth. Sarah Beth was a wicked sorceress who had a knack for shape-shifting into a black cat. She wasn't exactly everyone's favorite and had almost been kicked out for practicing witchcraft. But here's the kicker, her magic game was way too strong to get the boot that easily. Sarah Beth had to run in with some monster blood and got sucked right into it. That icky substance was locked away in a jar, thinking that it put a lid on her sorcery for once and for all. But nope, Sarah Beth was as stubborn as they come, and she managed to break free. She was eager to stir up some trouble, that's for sure. However, all's well that ends well, right? And the grand finale, Sarah Beth ended up getting herself consumed by that monster blood for good. That's the last we saw of the wicked sorceress. Good riddance, we think. The Ghostly Witches. Now let's talk about the Ghostly Witches, a trio of spooky sorceresses. These gals had a rather unusual origin. They started out as wicked witch hats just sitting on display in the costume section of Fred's pharmacy. You never guess what happened next. So Slappy the dummy, the one who's constantly stirring up trouble, decided to bring these hats to life. And boy did they come alive. These hats jumped off the shelves, spun around like crazy, and poof, they grew full-on ghostly bodies. Picture green, glowy heads with blank heads and broomsticks for getting around. Plus, they had this eerie, creepy face showing up whenever they expressed any emotion. The last time we saw them, they got sucked right into the haunted Halloween along with all the monsters Slappy conjured up. Talk about a wild ride for some once inanimate witch hats, right?
Aunt Dalia?
Yeah.
Aunt Dalia. Now let's talk about Aunt Dalia, who's one peculiar character. She's not your typical aunt. She goes around claiming to be the long-lost great aunt of various families, but here's the twist. She's not there for family reunions. She's on a mission to age their kids into senior citizens with some enchanted prune cookies. Yep, you've heard it right. She's all about speeding up the aging process so she can hook them up with her buddies. But, every witch has got their Achilles heel, and for Aunt Dalia, it's a good old pitcher of prune juice. Someone got smart and tossed it at her, which caused some significant damage. It peeled back her skin, revealing her creepy skeleton, and before you know it, poof, she crumbled into dust. And that was the end of Aunt Dalia. I guess prune juice isn't just good for your digestion, it's got some wicked magic busting powers too. Monster blood. Now, let's talk about the monster blood. That gooey green stuff with some seriously weird magic going on. It all starts in a little metal can that looks like your typical novelty slime toy, but it's got some funky abilities. It can glow in the dark and even bounce like a ball when you chuck it. But here's where things get crazy. This stuff is alive. This monstrous entity does not simply exist in a lifeless form. Rather, it actively feels around its environment and harbors an insatiable appetite. Without hesitation or discrimination, this force will consume everything within reach. Should you ever choose to open a can and ingest its contents, brace yourself, you will go through an unparalleled growth spurt. However, there is a method to stop it. Simply reseal the stuff back within the container. Airline food of all things is like kryptonite to this stuff. Feed it some and it shrinks right down. And remember, monster blood isn't immortal. It's got an expiration date, and if someone figures out a way to cure its effects, it's game over for this slimy monster maker. So watch out for that can, and for goodness sake, don't swallow it. The Lynx. The Lynx is an ancient mythical critter that's pretty bizarre. Picture a potato, but with a creepy twist. The monster has a mouth filled with jagged teeth and seemingly lacks eyes. Clearly, it deviates from the characteristics of your ordinary potato. Now, to delve into its peculiar nature, this Lynx sustains itself on human energy. However, it does not embody the traits of a typical energy leech, a supernatural energy vampire that clings to its victims relentlessly until complete and total energy depletion. Its tenacity surpasses that of a conventional alien. Therefore, should you encounter even the most ordinary potato, maintain your distance, otherwise an experience akin to being a deflated balloon may befall you. Watch out for the Lynx. Walter the Ogre. Let's dive into the tale of Walter, the manager of Fred's Pharmacy over at Warden Cliff, New York. Now, he had quite the adventure. One day, he got jumped by an ogre mask. Yeah, you heard that right. This mask had some real tricks up its non-existent sleeves and turned Walter into a full-blown ogre. Talk about an unexpected career change. Now, as soon as he's ogreified, he becomes Slappy's right-hand monster. It's like he's got an instant promotion in the monster world, right? But it doesn't stop there. Walter uses his newfound magic to bring every Halloween decoration in Warden Cliff to life, causing complete chaos. But here's where it gets really interesting. When all these monsters are sucked into haunted Halloween, something strange happens. The ogre mask is removed from Walter, and just like that, he's back to being regular old Walter. And here's the kicker. It seems like their transformation erased all memory of him being a monster. What a wild ride, huh? So Walter can now go back to his pharmacy duties without a care in the world, utterly clueless about his monster stint. The Gruel. Let's talk about the Gruel, this ancient mythical creature that's as weird as they come. It's a cousin of the Lynx, another strange critter. Now, the Gruel calls damp caves and rainforests home sweet home. This monster presents a remarkable visual spectacle, resembling a sponge in appearance. It is different from your ordinary dishwashing tool with an added touch of sliminess. Its complexion features wrinkled, light brown skin, accented by minuscule black eyes. The Gruel's peculiar aspect lies in its mood-based color-changing skin. A truly astonishing detail, however, is that this creature transitions to a new owner only upon the death of its previous one. Offering it as a gift equates to inviting your own downfall, a circumstance you simply don't want in your plate. The Gruel shoots out crazy powerful electric impulses that can kind of trap someone in a life or death relationship with it, like a mutual guarantee of destruction. And here's the creepy part. The Gruel feeds on the bad luck of people around it, especially its owner. But here's a twist. If you show this slimy fella enough love, it regresses into a harmless kitchen sponge. Imagine that, turning a monster into a kitchen tool with a bit of love. Wild, right? So if you've ever crossed paths with a Gruel, show it some love or you might end up in a sticky situation. The Mud Monsters. Now let's get down and dirty with the Mud Monsters. These bad boys hail from Muddy Creek and they've got a rather soggy backstory. It all started on a stormy night when a mega rainstorm caused the creek in the rainforest to go nuts and bury a whole village in a mudslide. Yeah, it was an absolute disaster and it took out all the villagers. Sad stuff, right? But here's where it gets spooky. The local legend goes that once a year on a specific night, the ghostly townsfolk rise from the mud, all covered in muck and earth, and they're on the hunt for innocent folks to drag down with them into the depths. They're these giant, bulky creatures with human-like mouths and vines all tangled up around their bodies. An absolute nightmare fuel kind of deal. These monsters go dormant when the rain dries up, just taking a muddy nap. But as soon as the rain comes back, they wake right up, ready to cause some havoc. So remember folks, don't go wandering around Muddy Creek during that spooky night, or you might end up as part of the mud crew. Stump, Madison Storm. Now, let's dive into the twisted tale of Madison Storm, also known as Stump. When he's in his horror form, back in the day, he was a lonely child, and instead of finding some healthy hobbies or making friends, his life goal became to make everyone else as miserable as he was. So, he cooked up a nightmare of a theme park, the one and only Horrorland. He rigged the whole thing to drive people insane and scare them senseless. And that's not all, he even whipped up a monster attractor to summon all kinds of creepy creatures, including the horrors. Storm even plastered cameras all over the park to catch every second of people's terror. Yeah, it's safe to say this guy's not playing with a full deck. If you somehow manage to survive his park's deadly rise in attractions, well, don't celebrate just yet. You might end up as monster fuel or taking a deep, never-ending dive. Now, Storm's personality, it's all over the place, moody and psychopathic, and he's not one to get his hands dirty. He prefers to stay in the shadows while others do his dirty work. But here's the kicker, it seems he was lonely even before the monster showed up at Horrorland. So yeah, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about him. Black is a horror with a bit of a bone to pick. So, Black had his heart set on being the host of the Horrorland game show Raw Deal. Sounds like a pretty ambitious gig, right? This monster exhibits a striking similarity to the other horrors in the park. However, he distinguishes himself in a very unexpected way. He is one of the rare good horrors. Nevertheless, his motivations are shrouded in mystery. Is he acting out of the goodness of his heart or merely seeking retribution against Raw Deal, denying him the hosting role? Whatever the case might be, Black soon soon encounters even more drama. He crosses paths with Ripper, a pivotal moment that propels his life into a rather dark direction. The situation escalates when he is viciously attacked and left for dead. Clearly, even within the realm of horrors, drama and competition for the limelight persist. Lex seems to have received an unfavorable slice in the pie of life, one that he couldn't have anticipated. Saber. Let's talk about Saber, the so-called monster lurking around Camp Nightmoon. So this Saber character is painted as this massive wolfish canine-like creature. I mean, we're talking about a real horror show in the making here. But here's the kicker. At the end of the episode, we find out Saber isn't some terrifying beast from the wild. Nope, it turns out Saber is just a big, fake animatronic controlled by George, one of the camp employees. Talk about a plot twist. So all that fear and tension around Camp Nightmoon, and it turns out it was all just a wild prank by George. So don't believe everything you hear, especially when it comes to monster stories at summer camps. The Body Squeezers. Let's get into the tale of the Body Squeezers. These are some really nasty aliens, no doubt about it. They're giant green-skinned beings with these weird oval black eyes, nostrils that could sniff out trouble, and tiny lipless mouths. But here's where it gets weirder. They've got two tusks curling out and caps of green skin on their foreheads that look like turtle shells. Talk about some bizarre-looking aliens. Now, these Body Squeezers used to hang out on a planet not too far from Earth, but they've got this wild idea. They wanted to change their appearances and get some new bodies, so their leader, Mr. Fleshman, yeah, that's his actual name, decided to take a field trip to Earth and see what we're all about. And wouldn't you know it, they decided to start an invasion. They used their power source, which, surprise, surprise, was Mr. Fleshman in disguise. These aliens were dead set on snatching some new bodies, and they weren't gonna let anything stand in their way. They're all aliens on a mission, and they're not the forgiving type. They'll hold a grudge if you cross them and manage to beat them, so keep an eye out for these Body Squeezers. They're not the kind of aliens you'd want to run into. Bees. Now here's a buzzworthy one, a swarm of bees right out of Goosebumps. You'd think bees are just those little buzzing insects, but in the Goosebumps world, they've turned into a nightmare. So you've got Slappy stirring up trouble, and he calls in the Bee Squad to help him out. These aren't your regular bees. Nope, they're like the Hulk version of bees. Big and menacing, and they're not here to make honey, that's for sure. They joined a monster party attacking Madison High School and making a beeline for R.L. Stine. To make matters worse, they go through the school's fences just like that, charging right in. It's like something out of a horror movie when they storm the school. They're chasing everyone down the hallways until they're herded into the gym, and what's the grand finale? They splatter into the doors as they slam shut. But here's the kicker, these bees aren't just big, they also look and sound like common houseflies. Imagine being chased by giant buzzing bees that seem like they're flies. Now that's the stuff of nightmares right there. The Snake Lady. Let's talk about the Snake Lady, the real showstopper at the Carnival of Horrors. She's this female reptilian monster that's part of the freak show there. But here's where it gets wild. She's not just chilling at the carnival when the chaos goes down and Slappy's leading the monster brigade in an all-out attack on the school. The Snake Lady is right there in the mix. They get up into all sorts of trouble. Now her current whereabouts are kind of a mystery, but the best guess is she got sucked into one of those Goosebumps books. So keep an eye out in case she decides to slip her back into the sea. These monsters don't like to stay quiet for too long. The Shrunken Head. It is now time to talk about the Shrunken Head. This is one funky magical thing, so picture this. A wrinkled, leathery head with thin black hair tied in a ponytail. It's got those solid dark eyes that can flash when it decides to light up. The head itself feels kind of warm and sticky, and it's as hard as a rock. Oh, and it's got a little white scratch on its left ear, just another part of its ages-old lore. But here's where the magic comes in. It can grant its owner something called jungle magic. No, it doesn't mean you'll start swinging from vines and talking to animals, but it's some kind of special power that only it can hand out. So this little head packs a punch, even if it looks like it has one too many wrinkles for its own good. Marvelous verdict. Alright folks, we've taken a wild ride through the Goosebumps TV series and met some of the creepiest, craziest monsters out there. From Slappy, the evil ventriloquist dummy, to the haunted mask that'll give you nightmares, these monsters are the stuff of childhood terrors. Indeed, the creativity and bizarre imagination employed to create these monsters is what really exemplifies R.L. Stine's creativity, the mastermind behind it all. Stine possesses the uncanny ability of tapping into our childhood fears, and this is what makes Goosebumps a timeless series. The lawn gnomes, the blob, or even the swamp monster each exhibits its unique brand of terror. So if you crave a little scare and some classic nostalgic horror, Goosebumps is just the thing for you. Bear in mind, monsters may lurk around every corner, even within the pages of a book or on your television screen.
If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.